This is Carol Ann Roberts, pillar of the Oak Creek community, wife to Mark, mother of two. She is a woman defined by her casseroles, her volunteer hours, her meticulously maintained garden. But for 30 years that garden has been a lie. A beautiful, fragrant lie planted directly over a festering secret. Her secret has a name. Lisa Marie Caldera. In 1994, Lisa was 17. A star. Not just a ballerina, but the ballerina of Oak Creek High, her future a blazing trail of promise leading to Juilliard. She had a laugh that was less a sound and more a force of nature. Infectious, loud, capable of silencing a crowded room with its joy. She was the sun around which her friends orbited. Especially Carol. Carol was the moon, present, constant, but reflecting Lisa's light. The party was at the old gravel pits, a rite of passage for Oak Creek teens. Bonfires dotted the landscape like fallen stars. The air was a cocktail of cheap beer, cigarette smoke, and the crisp, decaying scent of autumn. Carol had spent 2 hours picking her outfit. It was never about just looking good, it was about being seen. By him. Mark Davies. Quarterback. Golden boy. The owner of a smile that could make Carol's knees feel like water. She'd loved him since 7th grade with a quiet, desperate intensity that was a physical ache in her chest. She told Lisa everything. Every whispered hope, every detailed fantasy. Lisa had been her cheerleader. He'd be lucky to have you, Car. But that night Carol saw it. A shift. From across the fire, she watched as Mark approached Lisa.
Welcome, truth seekers. This is a crime ledger, where we dive deep into the world's most compelling criminal cases and unsolved mysteries. If you're ready for the deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's begin.
Saw him hand her a soda. Saw the way he leaned in, his attention absolute. Saw Lisa's hand, delicate and sure, touch his arm as she laughed at something he said. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was 1,000 tiny ones, and each one felt like a betrayal. She waited. She let the acid of her jealousy boil in her stomach until she couldn't stand it. She found Lisa near the edge of the woods, trying to get a better signal on her bulky cell phone. "We need to talk," Carol said, her voice tight. Lisa, distracted, smiled. "Hey, have you seen Mark? He's being so weird tonight." The words were a dagger. He's being so weird tonight. A shared intimacy Carol was excluded from. "I saw you with him," Carol accused, the words spilling out. You knew how I felt." Lisa's smile faded. "Car, it's not like that. We were just talking." "He was asking about you." It was the worst thing she could have said. A pitying lie. Carol saw it in her eyes, the lie of a beautiful person trying to let a plain one down easy. "Don't," Carol snarled, stepping closer. "Don't you dare lie to me." The argument escalated, a vicious, whispered torrent of accusations and denials. They moved further into the woods, the sounds of the party fading, replaced by the crunch of their feet on leaves and the ragged sound of their breathing. "You're just jealous," Lisa finally snapped, her patience fraying. "You're always just jealous of everything I have." The truth of it was a nuclear blast. It obliterated Carol's control. She didn't think. Her body moved on its own, a puppet of raw, unfiltered rage. She shoved Lisa. Art. It wasn't a push to make a point. It was a push to hurt. Lisa, caught off balance, her ballet shoes slipping on a patch of damp moss, flew backward. Time seemed to slow, then snap forward with brutal speed. The sickening, wet crack of her skull connecting with the granite was not loud. It was a small, final sound like a melon splitting open. Silence. Then a gurgle. A single, shuddering exhale. And then, nothing. The forest was still. Carol stood, frozen, her hands still outstretched. Lisa lay at her feet, a broken doll, her eyes open and staring at a sky she could no longer see. The rage vanished, replaced by a cold so profound it felt like her organs were shutting down. This is the moment that defines a life. The fork in the road. One path led to screams, to 911, to a lifetime of being the girl who accidentally killed her best friend. The other path was darker, quieter. Carol's mind, usually a whirl of social anxieties and homework, became terrifyingly clear. A survival computer booting up. "No one saw us leave together. The ground is soft here. I can't go to jail. I can't." She looked at Lisa's body. It was no longer Lisa. It was evidence. A problem to be solved. She dragged her. It was harder than she imagined. Lisa was dead weight, limbs catching on roots. Carol's arms screamed in protest. She found a small, natural depression near a cluster of ferns, a place they had once built a fort as children. She ran back to her car, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Parked discreetly down the road was her father's pickup. In the bed was a shovel, left over from a weekend landscaping project. Felt like a sign. She returned to the woods, the shovel heavy in her hand. The digging was a nightmare. Each thrust of the blade into the earth was an admission of her new reality. She was no longer a girl. She was a ghoul. A grave robber. She rolled Lisa's body into the shallow grave. She couldn't bring herself to look at her face. She focused on the task: cover it, hide it, make it disappear. She smoothed the dirt, scattered leaves and branches with a meticulous, manic energy. It was done. She walked back to the party, her clothes damp with sweat and dirt. She went to the bonfire, held her hands out to the flames. "Hey, have you seen Lisa?" a friend asked. Carol turned, her face a masterpiece of mild concern. "Yeah, she left a while ago. Said she was meeting some guys from Jefferson High. She seemed kinda upset, to be honest." The lie was born. And it was perfect. When Lisa was officially reported missing, Carol was the star witness. The grieving, supportive best friend. She led search parties. She cried on cue. She gave interviews, her eyes wide with manufactured fear. She told the police about the mysterious guys from Jefferson High. She subtly hinted that Lisa had been acting secretive lately, that she might have been into some stuff. She planted seeds of doubt, directing the narrative away from herself with a sociopath's precision. Detective Roy Miller, a veteran with a gut that rarely failed him, watched her. Her performance was flawless, but it was too flawless. The tears came on command. The details of her story never wavered, not even a little. It was rehearsed. But without a body, without a crime scene, without a single shred of physical evidence, his hands were tied. Carolyn was a sweet girl from a good family. Lisa was the one who might have been running with a wild crowd. The case grew cold, a file folder of dead ends and despair, and life in its cruel, relentless way moved on. Carol graduated. She went to college. And 2 years after she buried her best friend, she started dating Mark Davies, the boy whose attention had started it all. He was vulnerable, grieving the loss of his friend Lisa. Carol was there. A steady, comforting presence who understood his pain. They married, had children. She built a life on the foundation of her lie. A beautiful, perfect, enviable life. But at night, in the silence, she heard it. The sound. The thwack. The finality of it. And sometimes she'd look at her husband, at her children, and see only ghosts. She had built her castle on a grave. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that one day the ground would give way. News reporter VO, and the new Whispering Pines subdivision is set to break ground next week, transforming this once wooded area into a 30 years. For 30 years, Carolyn Roberts had held her breath. She had curated her life like a museum exhibit of normalcy. Her children's artwork was on the fridge. Her husband's lunch was packed every morning. Her garden was the envy of the street. But the past was a sleeping beast, and it was about to be awoken by the blade of a bulldozer. The land was being sold. The woods, her woods, were being cleared. They were going to dig. They were going to gouge the earth, and they would find what she had put there. The perfect fortress of her life was about to be besieged, and the enemy was progress. The panic was a living thing clawing at her throat. She couldn't just wait. She had to do something. The thought was insane, a symptom of a mind cracking under 3 decades of pressure. She had to move the body. It was a moonless night, the kind of darkness that feels solid. She drove to the edge of the development, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She carried a new shovel bought for cash 2 towns over. Finding the spot was harder than she remembered. The landmarks were different. Trees were gone. But a single ancient oak, with a distinctive gash she'd made with a rock, remained. Her personal tombstone. She started to dig. The earth was harder now, tangled with roots. Every shovelful was a scream in the silent night. She was 50 years old. Her back ached. Her hands, soft from years of domesticity, blistered and bled. She was so consumed by the horror of her task, by the fear of what she would find, that she didn't feel the root catch the heel of her boot. She fell forward with a grunt, the shovel flying from her grasp. Her wrist wrenched back and she heard a faint ping. She scrambled up, dusted herself off, grabbed the shovel and continued her macabre work. She never noticed the absence of weight on her left wrist. She never saw the glint of gold in the mulch as her expensive bracelet watch, a 20th anniversary gift from Mark, slipped away into the void. The next morning, a surveyor named Ben jogged the perimeter of the site. His boot kicked something metallic. He bent down and picked up a woman's watch. It was elegant, clearly expensive. He shrugged, assuming it was trash from kids partying, and tossed it onto the passenger seat of his pickup truck. It sat there for weeks, buried under maps and coffee cups. Meanwhile, Carol was unraveling. She couldn't sleep. She jumped at every phone call. She scrutinized her husband's face for any sign of suspicion. The guilt she had compartmentalized for so long was now a toxic leak, poisoning everything. She finally noticed the watch was missing. A cold dread seeped into her. She tore the house apart. She retraced her steps in the supermarket, the school, the garden. It never occurred to her to check the woods. The woods were the source of the problem, not the site of a new one. Weeks later, Ben cleaned out his truck. He found the watch again. He was about to throw it in the trash when he saw the engraving on the back. To Carol. Always Mark. It felt too personal to discard. On a whim, he dropped it off at the local police station. Found it out at the Whispering Pines site, he told the desk sergeant. Might be nothing. The watch ended up on the desk of Detective Eva Torres, who was reviewing cold cases. The name Whispering Pines triggered a connection. She pulled the old, thick file for Lisa Caldera. The disappearance location was the same. She took the watch to her mentor, the now-retired Detective Roy Miller. His face, lined with age and the ghosts of unsolved cases, went pale. Carol, he whispered, the name tasting like ash. Carol Ann. The one thread he could never pull. The one who married the victim's crush. The one with the perfect, unwavering story. Why was her watch there? Now, in the exact, remote location that was about to be dug up? It wasn't a clue. It was a confession written in gold. They didn't bring her in with sirens. They used silence, the most powerful weapon of all. Detective Torres called her. Mrs. Roberts, we're following up on some new developments in the Lisa Caldera case. We'd appreciate it if you could come down and answer a few questions, help us with our timeline. For closure. Carol's blood turned to ice. But the mask was her oldest companion. She arrived at the station, perfectly composed, a touch of polite sadness on her face. The interview room was sterile, cold. Torres was friendly. Miller sat in the corner, silent, observing. They walked her through the old story. Carol recited it perfectly, her voice a steady, mournful melody. Then Torres placed the watch on the table between them. We found this, Mrs. Roberts. Out at the old gravel pits. The new development site. Carol's eyes dropped to the watch. Her left hand instinctively flew to her bare wrist. A tremor ran through her body. The color drained from her face so completely she looked like a corpse. That's mine, she stammered. I lost it weeks ago. Gardening. Miller finally spoke, his voice quiet but filling the room. Gardening, Carol? Half a mile into the woods where your best friend was murdered. The word murdered hung in the air, toxic and final. The dam broke. It started as a single, ragged sob. Then another. The perfectly constructed mask shattered into a million pieces. The story poured out of her, not in a linear confession, but in choked, horrific fragments. She was laughing at me. I just pushed her. The sound? I still hear the sound. I had to dig. I dug all night. I told her mom I didn't know. I ate at her table. She led them to the grave. The developers had already stripped the topsoil. It was only a matter of days, perhaps hours, before the skeletal remains were discovered. They found Lisa, still nestled in the earth, a silent witness finally allowed to speak. Carol Ann Roberts was charged with second-degree murder. There was no trial. She pled guilty, accepting a sentence of life with the possibility of parole in 20 years, a mathematical insult to the 30 years she had stolen from Lisa. The sentencing hearing was not about justice. It was about ghosts. Lisa's mother, Eleanor, stood before the court, a woman eroded by grief. She did not look at Carol. For 30 years, she began, her voice a dry rustle, I prayed for a phone call. I prayed it was a kidnapping, that she was alive somewhere. I prayed for a body so I could bury my child. I never prayed for the truth because the truth was a monster I had broken bread with. She turned, finally, and her gaze landed on Carol. It was not filled with hate, but with a bottomless, weary sorrow. You took my daughter's life. Then you took my grief and you used it. You held my hand and you cried with me, and all the while you knew. You knew where she was. You knew what you had done. You are not a person. You are a void. Carol, wearing a prison jumpsuit, said nothing. She was already gone, a hollowed-out shell. The girl who had pushed Lisa was finally, completely dead. So what is the lesson here? That guilt always finds you? Perhaps. But the deeper, more unsettling truth is that Carol almost won. For 30 years she had it all. The love, the family, the life. She was a success story built on a single terrible secret. Her undoing wasn't a brilliant detective or a sworn enemy. It was a root, a stumble, a broken clasp on a bracelet watch. A mistake so small, so random, so utterly insignificant. It proves that the universe is not just, it is chaotic. And the fragile walls we build to hide our darkness can be brought down by the slightest, most accidental breath of wind. The gravedigger became a gardener, tending her beautiful life atop the bones of her crime. But in the end, the earth always gives up its dead.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories told like never before.